Hi there. My name is Michael Lee. I'm the designer in the editor group, and today I'm going to walk you through um, some of the work that we've been looking at in the editor group and thinking about how the wiki could look over the next few milestones. So, for those who are not aware, working at GitLab, we have a product called the wiki, and uh, it allows teams to document things. And we also had this in the handbook where we had this attitude around wikis where they don't scale because, long story short, the way that it normally operates is that there's not a way to review or propose changes. So it makes collaboration a little bit different, and it's hard to coordinate large changes over multiple areas. So a lot of the changes with the wiki is page by page. So thinking about that and how it like fits in with our handbook, yeah, that's why we had this kind of page in our handbook where we say handbooks don't scale. But I'm going to come back to this at the end, and I'm going to reflect on how our group is thinking about these 2 points around wikis. The funny thing is that to our customers, it's one of our most used categories. So there's a lot of usage, hundreds and thousands of u- unique users every month using the wiki, and they use Markdown. We spoke to a few customers who use ASCII doc for their special formatting needs and documentation references and things like that. So um, we actually thought that this was going to be a good spot to start thinking about how we can introduce um, a better editing experience within GitLab and introduce it through the wiki, and then working from there, considering different areas to branch out from there. So jumping back into where we're at with the file, we started off with just looking at the page here. This is the wiki page. And some of the things that we looked at as a group was, like what on this page right now, you're supposed to edit this area here, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. So you have this this area on the top where it's like clone repository, edit sidebar while you're editing content. So we questioned that, and we also question having a table of contents over here too, because if you click on any of these links, you would leave your editing experience and jump to that specific page. So we're like, that's that's very different. We haven't seen that elsewhere in other products, and it feels like it's trying to do two jobs. And if this and this are both questionable, we also question the whole right sidebar while editing. It makes a lot of sense to have these things when it's read only. When you're reading, it's good to have a table of contents of all the pages available. But while you're editing, we question its usability. The header itself is very different from other pages in GitLab, where we have like a link up here with the title of the page, which behaves like a breadcrumb, but not really a breadcrumb. So there's an opportunity around there. Down here is like the commit message is interesting because that implies that this is actually on top of Git. So our wiki is actually Git based. So that's actually an interesting fact that we'll come back to. But we're also taking a look at commit flows across our different editors, the web IDE, the single file editor, and we're looking at ways to like consolidate and make those uniform and familiar to people as they move throughout the different products. So this is an opportunity for us to change as well. For those looking at this in the past, whenever I showed people wiki pages, they're like, oh, we do like label and the input field on the side. That's not pajamas. Pajamas is like label on top and then the input field at the bottom. So updating this whole area to conform with pajamas is another area to operate. And finally, looking at this area down here, which is like the editing experience. So this is the editing experience that you know from issue descriptions, comments, and also wiki. It's all consistent, it's all the same. But we're also introducing this other rich text editing experience. And with that, we found out in our feedback issue when we launched both side by side is that people actually do want the ability to go back to edit the source because they're more familiar with Markdown, or there's some certain scenarios where editing in Markdown is easier than raw text, or some people just prefer seeing Markdown as they edit, which is fine, and it suits the major persona of our users. So that's good. So we're going to accommodate for both experiences. So we had a lot of questions. So what we did was we did a solution validation where we wanted to take it to this like big picture kind of idea of like a more modern experience where it's more focused on editing the content. So if we go back to the read-only view, this is what it would look like in our explorations. We left the sidebar alone for now, and we went through and just got people to just interact with this. We interviewed people who were GitLab users, and we had another test that had other people who were who never used GitLab before. So they might have used Confluence or other products before. So we just wanted to get an idea of that. So if you get into edit mode, getting into here, we ask people just general things about, you know, can you edit the title? This is some other ideas that we're experimenting with, whether we should have this kind of experience of editing titles in line with the content. And you know, how would you change the page location? So if it's under the Olympics tag area here, how would you change that? Because we have hunches that not many people may know that you can just change the path by changing the title of the page. So we wanted to see if it's worth experimenting, having an explicit feature to navigate and change your position, like a move to page experience. So, and finally, there's the kind of the commit flow. So moving everything up to the top right. There's probably going to be some other further deeper explorations around this, and other scenarios where you may want to change the branch or add extra features, but that's something that we'll go through the future state. So through the back of that, we were really confident with some of the feedback that we got, and we thought, okay, we're going to move forward with some of this stuff. And so we're happy with the general layout of the page, but jumping from to this is a pretty drastic step for us, for GitLab. And so we wanted to see, you know, what intermediate steps, how might we get there? Because there's still a glaring problem that I haven't touched here, is like, how do I switch from this editing experience where it's rich text and allowing people to edit and Markdown? So we did some explorations, like using toggles, checkboxes, segment controls, and Zoom's controls are in my face, so I can't see the tab. So I'm just gonna move that for a second. So we were trying a whole different slew of different possibilities of what that could be. Where we kind of landed to was this kind of layout here. So if I'm editing the content, you can see that the page now kind of looks like the existing page, but what we've already done is take a look at adopting some of the Pajamas UI components and like formatting into that kind of structure. And we're using the toolbar, but we kind of changed it like this because, like I said, some people edit in Markdown, some people edit in rich text, and some people enter an ASCII doc. And I was not very familiar with the scenarios around ASCII doc, but there's some cases where preview actually doesn't work for those kind of documents. So in those scenarios, one issue that's out there is proposing that we potentially hide the preview. And if you hide the preview, this whole area potentially doesn't make any sense. So we would hide that. So what that would look like is if you switch to rich text, this is your editing experience. You get, you just type as you go. This is limited to the center page, but our vision is to go as full page as possible. Going to here in the ASCII doc example, it kind of keeps everything consistent, familiar, but all the controls are specific to those markup languages. So if I switch back to Markdown, what we envision is that like there'll be ways to add images and other media things in here. We look at potentially consolidating the toolbars between the rich text editor and this editor so that they have parity in features. And for bringing documentation closer, currently on most pages of our editors, you'll see like Markdown is supported. And if you click on that, it opens up, it takes you to a different page. What we're thinking about is experimenting ideas with this, where we try to bring documentation in closer to where you're at, where you're editing. So if you pin this, it will stick onto the right-hand side and stuff like that. This is just loading the page here, but if this is thinking like an MVC iteration kind of mindset, is like, this is like small, and then, if it's something that's worthwhile, then we can invest more time to build like custom controls, a custom view to just list all the different actions that you can do here. Yeah, so this is really exciting. So the layout changing, the content editor giving more functionality while keeping things consistent. That's all very exciting. And the other things that we're looking into doing is actually like experimenting with interacting with different types of content. So if you made a comment inside a Markdown file, it looks like this today. But where we see that happening is that could be a explicit element that we support. So it could have something like this. And if you hover over it, it could allow you to insert source comments and stuff like that. So this idea of elevating the editing experience is something that we're looking at. And just this morning, taking that same kind of pattern with formulas, which is popular in wikis. This is like an MVC kind of approach to things. In the future, we would render it as like proper notation, and with the idea of then clicking on it, and then it allows you to enter a formula, and then leave it up to us, GitLab, to figure out how to make it beautiful. So yes, that's the walkthrough of what we're thinking about in updating the wiki layout. All right, I'll jump into some of the questions on the form now. So Vithika, you had the first one. Do you want to?
Sure. You already answered the first part, which is the sidebar an index of the content, or could it be edited in disconnection? So you mentioned that if we alter the name of the section, then we can also change the path. Is there something more to
that? It could be edited, disconnected. It's the index of the it's the index of the whole wiki site, not the content. So it's not like in this page here are like sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but that could be actually a better use of that sidebar. So you can jump to different section, and that's something that people have raised in the past. Like, how does the wiki handle long pages? When we're talking long, we're talking about like 50 megabytes long, because they have sections. And this kind of performance or large pages is something that we're looking at as well for maintaining that tree structure. So on a page of 100 pages, not a big deal navigating a tree like that, but imagine thousands of pages, and in each page there'll be like agenda meetings for the last 4 years or whatever. But yeah, it adds up. So we're looking at these edge cases around the table of contents of the whole wiki site. So yeah, but yeah, using it for sections is a great idea.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of these changes, and I'm also happy to see the full view experience for editors because in the previous quarter when we were design buddies, I did mention to you that I was trying to dog food it for one of my personal projects, and it felt very restraining. Like the box experience was not so fun. So this looks really good, the full screen.
Yeah, yeah, it's the wiki editor, and basically the only editing space is like 25%. It's like the smallest square. So yeah. Rihanna, you have the second question.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it was really interesting also seeing the pattern and the pajamas pattern being reused, but also what called my attention was the commit popover pattern being used in context with the wiki. And it made me think of a similar pattern that Daniel is using, I think, for approval of deployments. Daniel, please correct me if I'm wrong. That it's just the same pop-up with, let's say, more sass. More things in terms of you got a comment, you can maybe tag a user, etc. I was just wondering if that component, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just thinking out loud, if that pattern is ready to be reused today. I know that we use in context with the merge requests, but I think it's also an opportunity for us to start analyzing how the UI behaves and how it plays in different use cases within the app. And I see Pedro replying to my comment.
Yes, yes. I think we're all looking at Pedro's comments here, but yeah. So we're looking at it as one of many possible options. This was one that I shopped around the UX co-working group, and like people seem to resonate well with it internally. So we're like, cool, let's run with it. We did solution validation and it works okay. But yeah, to Pedro's upcoming point, I did see some edge cases around using the popover pattern. And if you introduce a drop down on it, it could introduce interesting interaction behaviors that are unexpected. So yeah, yeah. And yes, so we're aware that, so we are, yeah, I'm happy to sync up with Daniel to see how he's thinking about that pattern for in deployment, because yeah, with learnability, I think we should try to like use these things consistently as a product.
Awesome. Thank you.
Pedro, you have a point and a question, so I'll let you take the floor.
Thanks, Michael. This is great to see this kind of work. I feel like it's very different from what we are used to seeing from GitLab designers. So I really appreciate the time you're putting into this and showing this to us. Yeah, about the popover or drop down pattern in this case. Yeah, we already have that today in the product when you're applying suggestions. And yeah, we didn't want to block you and to show a dialogue, so a model that would not allow you to move around the page to, if for example you want to copy something for your commit message. So we already use that, but it just has one field and one submit button. And another issue, and I think Michael, you also saw or commented on that issue, is that we're looking to move away from this specific pattern for the create a merge request dropdown that we have in issues, because that has many conditionals and many fields, and it's becoming very difficult to work with that. So I think I don't know, a good rule of thumb here is maybe try to keep things in context and without moving the user to a modal or to a new page if possible. But when you have so many fields, maybe a modal or even a drawer, I think at some point we also suggested a drawer for this might be interesting. But for your case, I think it's perfect, that drop-down pattern.
Yeah. So while I'm looking at this, I'm also looking at the commit flow for the single file editor and the web IDE, and they all kind of like fit the spectrum of one field, simple radial buttons and drop downs galore in the web IDE. So it's like I'm balancing this spectrum as well. So yeah, I think drawer and modals is probably something we've considered in the past. We'll probably end up modals is something a little bit more something that we might lean towards, because we've explored a bit of that with the static site editor in the past. So this could be an opportunity to revisit and reshape it for the things, because what we do want to have is a consistent commit flow for single file editor, web IDE, wiki, pipeline editors. It's kind of like these are making changes to a file and save. We shouldn't have 3-4 different ways to do it. But yeah, context matters. So thank you.
Thanks for the discussion. I want to keep us on track. We still have 3 awesome presentations to go. So thanks, Michael, for presenting, and please follow up with questions in the doc. Okay?